I'm Brittany, this is Shenwei, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. We're still here, okay? So, we're on page 173 of Volume 2 of Guardian. We are on chapter 13. We read for a couple of hours. We usually make it about 40 to 50 pages. And there will be a break about halfway through for a few minutes to get more tea, walk around, take a break, take a breather. And let us begin. Shenwei! Zhao Yunlun grabbed Shenwei's wrist. Even blind, there was no missing the piercing cold killing intent that was suddenly radiating from him. When Shenwei spoke, his voice held no trace of his usual refinement. Instead, it was dark and ominous. How dare the Crow tribe harm you? Wretched, ungrateful things. Even death by 1,000 cuts, or their total extinction, could never make up for... Every syllable dripped with bloodlust, but his seething was broken off when Zhao Yunlun wrapped both arms around him. Instinctively, Shenwei began to struggle fiercely. But then inspiration struck Zhao Yunlun. "Xiaowei!" he exclaimed. Shenwei went utterly still in his arms. After a moment, Shenwei turned and gave Zhao Yunlun a disbelieving look. Voice trembling, he said, What did you call me?" "Shh, listen to me. Don't move." Zhao Yunlun closed his eyes and opened his heavenly eye. His perception through it had become a bit blurry, overwhelmed by the Yao market surrounding them. He tugged Shenwei slightly back, and the two of them blended into the crowd of Yao. Shenwei's mind was in complete disarray. In his outburst, a tiny clue had slipped out, clearly unintentionally. But Zhao Yunlun latched onto it at once. What had he meant by ungrateful? What connection did he, Zhao Yunlun, have to the Crow tribe, or rather to all the Yao? An ancient saying sprang to mind. If misfortune descends from the heavens, the crows are the first to know. So what had the Black Crow tribe known first this time? Fourth uncle nodded politely to the group of crows and said calmly, "I thought the Crow tribe wasn't planning to attend." The Crow tribe elder was a woman. Other than the half-Yao man, every member of their tribe was short, with large noses and deeply wrinkled faces. There was no telling young from old or beautiful from ugly. The elder's eyes were a little crooked and made her seem as though she could be looking elsewhere. But her gaze might also have swept unintentionally across Zhao Yunlun, a reserved spark shining from her cloudy eyes. She slammed her staff against the ground, and when she raised her hand again, the ropes binding the half-Yao fell off. "Child, come here." Fourth uncle tucked his hands into his sleeves and made no move to stop him. The Yao market was suddenly full of muttering. The half-Yao man had nearly stumbled off the stage when fourth uncle slowly said, "If the elder wishes to take away her own people, it's not my place to stand in her way. But does this indicate that the Crow tribe wishes to part ways with the rest of the Yao and stand alone?" Hoarsely, the Crow tribe elder answered, "That's right." A wave of whispers swept across the crowd. The little Yao exchanged looks. Even Winter Jasmine peeked out from the vines wrapped around the bridge and peered at the others, completely lost. Calmly, fourth uncle said, "No matter how much rotten flesh you eat or how many dealings you have with white bone and the dead, the crows will always be Yao. You are neither reapers nor ghost immortals. Words may easily slip through your lips, elder, but you'd better consider consequences carefully." The laugh that burst from the Crow tribe elder was harsh and heavy. It was unclear whether it was born of anger or glee, but it was thick with grief, indignation, and ridicule passed down from the dawn of time. If Lord Forth didn't hear me clearly, let me repeat myself. We, the Black Crow tribe, are severing ourselves from the throngs of the Yao. From this day forward, we are our only family, and we will never look back. Winter Jasmine cried out in shock, "Crow elder!" Fourth uncle held her back. With a sweep of her arm, the Crow elder prompted the Crow tribe to leave as they had come, in a single dark mass that moved too swiftly for anyone to react. The crowd's whispering became an uproar. Fourth uncle waved his arm, and the little monkey with the gong banged on it heavily a few times, scolding the chaotic crowd. During the upheaval, Zhao Yunlan pulled Shen Wei out of the crowd of Yao, and the two of them quickly left the Yao market. Following the stone slab road from the entrance all the way to its end, they found a cloud of mist. They stepped through the mist, and on the other side they were greeted by the bright neon lights of Dragon City, with its broad streets and small alleyways. A row of crows had landed on the large pagoda tree at the mouth of Antique Street. As a taxi swept by, its talkative driver said to his passenger, "Look, even the crows are celebrating Lunar New Year." The black cat silently prowled out from the corner, paw pads lightly brushing the ground, before he leapt nimbly up onto the wall. Dozens of crows simultaneously snapped their heads around to peer at him. The rows of tiny scarlet eyes shone like inauspicious light bulbs. Da Qing stopped 10 steps away and didn't approach, to show he had no ill intent. The Crow tribe elder took a step forward and asked bluntly, "To what do we owe the pleasure?" The black cat's dark green eyes were just like a pair of genuine cat's eye quartz. Their corners were slightly raised, and their depths had an eerie glimmer. In that moment, he was the epitome of the lazy elegance unique to felines. One could almost forget that he was a furry sphere of a cat. "If I may be so bold," Da Qing said with tremendous courtesy, "I've come seeking an answer, elder. How did the bell I lost centuries ago come to be in your tribe's hands?" The Crow tribe elder studied him coldly. "My black Crow tribe are harbingers of tragedy, never joy. We are never found among the living, only the dead. Why ask such a pointless question? Where do you suppose we might have acquired it other than from one of the dead?" Da Qing's body tensed for a second, but he pressed on. "Where and when did that person die? Of what cause?" The Crow tribe elder laughed. "Once someone is dead, they're dead. Once he goes through the cycle of reincarnation, his previous life is already over. In this life, who knows? He might be a dog or a pig. Why do you care when and where he died?" Da Qing lowered his head slightly and said nothing. The Crow tribe elder shared his silence for a moment, then said, with a touch of impatience, "A pavilion 10 kilometers outside Shanghai Pass. Go take a look if you feel so inclined. Don't say I kept things hidden from you. You don't think carrying around a dead person's bell is unlucky?" At her whistle, the large murder of crows shot skyward, flying toward the ink-dark horizon. Da Qing stood there in the darkness, head down, for some time. He suddenly looked like a desolate stray cat. It wasn't until a car's headlights flashed in his direction that he jumped down silently from the wall and disappeared into the night. With one blink of the torch dragon's eyes, a day and night passed by. In no time at all, it was Lunar New Year's Eve. On Lunar New Year's Eve, all the lights were on at the Special Investigations Department. The humans feasted while the ghosts savored incense and spirit money. With great joy, Lao Wu from the gatehouse and his daytime colleague with the penchant for carving bones were finally able to be together. Lao Wu happily toasted Lao Li with a stick of incense, and the other man returned the toast with alcohol in a bone china cup. Lao Li always seemed to have a nearly unhealthy obsession when it came to bones. Toward the latter half of the night, after the New Year's bell had already rung, drunk humans and ghosts alike started to run wild. Go Cheng Chung flopped down on the table, sobbing loudly for some reason. After he finished crying, he tucked himself into a little corner and ignored everyone, meticulously polishing his work ID over and over with a microfiber cloth. Finally, he rolled under the table and fell into a deep sleep. Chu Shuzhi, Lin Jing, Zhu Hong, and Da Qing were gathered at a mahjong table. Other people's chips automatically became dried fish when they arrived in front of Da Qing. The cat's expression was deadly serious. He had no choice but to keep winning, having eaten almost all his chips. Lao Li pulled the giant femur from out of nowhere and started pole dancing in front of everyone. Song Zun grabbed Wang Zheng's hand, pulling her unexpectedly into his arms. He held her waist and lifted her up high. She laughed, humming a little tune from a faraway time, and danced a Hanga tribe dance with him. Zhao Yunlan, having already gone through a round of drinks with everyone, couldn't quite sit steadily. The flower Yao's nectar of 1,000 essences had proved to be as miraculous as he'd hoped. His vision had already started to return, although it was still a bit blurry, as if he were severely nearsighted. Despite being unable to distinguish between 6 dots and 9 dots on the mahjong tiles, he still squinted determinedly and ignored his current disability. With his face pressed close to the table, he was backseat driving Da Qing. Peng, peng, peng! Da Qing shoved him with a paw. Peng your ass, Shen Lao She, hurry and lead this noisy donkey away. 4 bamboo. Sorry, I win, said Zhu Hong. Disappointed, Zhao Yunlan smacked Da Qing in the head. See, if you don't listen to your elders, it comes back to bite you. Da Qing's heart shattered as he lost custody of his dried fish. Furious, he roared, hurry and drag him away. Shen Wei obligingly dragged Zhao Yunlan away. In his hands, a full-grown man or a 50-kilogram lacquer box seemed equally weightless, as easy to carry around as a thin old book. Despite her best efforts, Zhu Hong didn't manage to be inconspicuous as she dropped her eyes to avoid his gaze. Janae Henning is here, everybody. Everybody say hi, Janae. She's fabulous. Go follow her. She has a YouTube channel. Shen Wei took a seat. Yes, Shen Wei took a seat and let Zhao Yunlan lie down and use his thigh as a pillow. He gently massaged Zhao Yunlan's temples. Close your eyes. They haven't fully recovered, so don't strain them trying to see. You'll overwhelm yourself. Zhao Yunlan shut his eyes, completely blissed out. Voice muffled, he said, Can you warm me another cup of liquor? But Shen Wei was clearly a little distracted and didn't hear. Zhao Yunlan looked at him again. Through his blurry vision, he saw that Shen Wei was spacing out, gaze drifting to the corner of the table. Astute as he was, Zhao Yunlan understood at once. He reached up and gave Shen Wei's collar a tug. What, are you nervous about meeting the in-laws? Attention returning to the conversation, Shen Wei didn't bother denying it. All parents want their children to be safe and healthy for their entire lives. They hope their son will be happy and at peace with a wife and kids. Bringing me over like this, how can you deny your parents a good new year? Shutting his eyes again, Zhao Yunlan grabbed Shen Wei's hand. Since his eyesight had started returning, his heavenly eyes seemed to be affected by his physical ones, rendering him unable to see people's merits anymore. But he would always remember the text forming on Shen Wei and being wiped away with the mercilessness of the tides, drowned under a bottomless darkness. If I didn't invite you home with me, where would you spend Lunar New Year? New Year or not, what difference does it? Back on that side? Zhao Yunlan interrupted. Under the Huang Quan, where there isn't even a single ray of light, with maybe a few passing spirits at best for company. Shen Wei pursed his lips. No, it was worse than that. Not that Shen Wei had ever thought anything of it. He had lived thousands of years like that, each day exactly like the one before. But somehow, after hearing Zhao Yunlan put it that way, it suddenly struck him as unfair. He was long since accustomed to passing his days like that, but now a feeling washed over him. The feeling that he couldn't bear a single day more of it. From the dawn of chaos, when the spirits of all things came into being, to the present moment, the world had changed countless times and in countless ways. And yet Shen Wei still tenaciously honored the oath that had long since been forgotten by even the person he had sworn it to. His entire existence had been devoted to that single sentence. Zhao Yunlan silently put Shen Wei's hand on his chest. Perhaps because of the alcohol, Zhao Yunlan's pulse was a little fast. After a while, when Shen Wei thought he was about to fall asleep, Zhao Yunlan quietly asked, Wei, how did you come by that name? It was originally the character Wei that's made up of mountain and ghost. Shen Wei's gaze dropped, seeming to gaze right through the gleaming floor. There was no knowing how far into the past he was looking. But someone once said to me that while Mountain Ghost was fitting, it was perhaps naming me into a corner. He told me that in this world the mountains and seas are all connected, and lofty peaks stretch out endlessly. He suggested, why don't we add a few more strokes and make it a proper name? That has a footnote. Wei is formed from the characters mountain and ghost, while Wei has the added character, Wei with I can never remember the names of any accent marks, so I'm so sorry. But there's a Wei with a horizontal accent mark, so that while Wei has the added character Wei without the accent mark. Both characters mean large, tall, lofty, but has a more uneven, craggy connotation, while the other one is more majestic and dignified. Interesting. Zhao Yunlan touched his nose. This mysterious someone had a way of speaking that sounded rather familiar. Who has the audacity to just randomly rename someone? Shenwei smiled. Just someone I met by chance on the road. The conversation dropped off there. Dawn had just broken and the entire street was filled with the cacophony of firecrackers. Inside, the mahjong players shouted at each other while little ghosts tried to avoid the light of sunrise. The lively sight was blinding. A small snowstorm pulled open the curtains on Dragon City's Lunar New Year. The world was at peace and the spectacular lights dimmed for the first time this year. Tens of thousands of families took their first breaths of the year through this auspicious first snow, the air tinged with the smell of gunpowder. The new year had begun, and once again the mortal realm welcomed the countless new joys and griefs that awaited them. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, the raucous celebration at Four Bright Avenue finally ended around noon. Everyone bundled up in their coats, leaving one by one in a drunken daze, and lined up at the entrance for taxis. Lao Li, however, waited for everyone to leave before washing his face and getting out cleaning supplies from somewhere. Slowly, he began cleaning up the wreckage of the office. Da Qing poked his head in, saw that the floor was a mess, and pulled his paws back, afraid of being roped into doing work. Lao Li hurriedly pulled out a rag, wiped the chairs clean and lined them up, then respectfully lifted the cat lord up to the chairs. Walk up here. The chairs are clean. You're the only one left again. Kids these days, they're getting more and more disrespectful. Muttering like an old man, Da Qing carefully jumped onto the desk from the chair. There's one left. Lao Li pointed to the corner where Da Qing saw Go Cheng Chung, who had just gotten up. Come here, kid. I was just looking for you. Da Qing glared at Go Cheng Chung and found a coaster on Zhu Hong's desk. He swiped the coaster away, revealing a red envelope containing gift cards. Picking it up with his teeth, he threw it right into Go Cheng Chung's face and huffed, Lao Zhao wants you to take that to your second uncle. Tell him Director Zhao said that he won't be dropping by so that your uncle can fully enjoy one of his rare days off during the new year. It's just a small New Year's gift so your aunt and cousin can add a few new things to their wardrobes. Da Qing spat. Stupid humans, making me relay such disgusting words. Go Cheng Chung was dizzy with a headache, so it took him half a beat to react. When he finally remembered where he was, he smiled politely, carefully picked up the red envelope, and tucked it away. Then he looked back at Lao Li and saw him holding a mop. Go Cheng Chung immediately rolled up his sleeves and headed over. Li Ge, let me help you. Mid-sentence, he tripped over a chair leg and fell on his face. With a humph, Da Qing settled in front of a computer and turned it on with a paw. Wielding the mouse with the same paw, he opened a browser. It was no easy task. When Lao Li saw, he hurried over to help. What do you need to type? He asked warmly. I can help you. Shanghai, Da Qing began, but he cut himself short as the hi slipped out of his mouth and changed tone, sounding like huh. Huh clamped his mouth shut and stared expressionlessly at the screen for a while before looking down. Oh, I want to go on Weibo. Zhao Yunlan had said he had some important business to take care of and would be back a little later to pick Da Qing up, so the cat had decided to pass his time in front of the computer. He logged into the Lord Meow #1 in the world account and started idly taking selfies with the webcam and uploading them. Meanwhile, Lao Li and Xiao Guo quietly dealt with the sad state of the office. Earlier, Da Qing had intended to say that he wanted to go to the pavilion about 10 kilometers outside Shanghai Pass and see for himself what kind of place it was, but the Crow Tribe elder was right. What good would seeing do? A dead person was dead. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. With a click of the camera, Da Qing uploaded his large pancake face onto the web, captioned it, uniquely handsome meow, and posted it. In no time, cat lovers were littering the post with comments. Some praised the solid, pure color of his fur, while others gave such friendly suggestions as, OP, your cat's too fat. Please adjust its diet and make sure it gets more exercise so it can be healthy. Da Qing deleted the comment at the speed of light. Indignant, he thought, you're the fat one, stupid human. The bell on his neck jostled as he moved, but it didn't make a sound. Now and then a golden glint would bounce off it onto the snow-white walls. Lao Li couldn't help raising a hand to block the blinding light. He glanced back at the black cat, who seemed to be in low spirits. He was just about to say something when Chu Shuzhi walked out of the wall. Normally, Chu Shuzhi was barred from the library, but he was allowed inside once a year, on the first day of the Lunar New Year. However, it didn't look like he had borrowed any books or read anything this time. Furthermore, there was something deeply strange about his expression. He looked a little haggard. but also somehow derisive. Go Chang Chung perked up at once. Chuga! I'm fine. He didn't seem to hear. He picked up his bag with a smile that bordered on icy and headed for the exit. Daching peeked out from behind the monitor and said, seemingly out of nowhere, asked, "How many years has it been?" Chu Shuzhi's footsteps paused. "Exactly 300, he said, voice rough. "Ah, then, is it time for congratulations?" asked Daching. In response, Chu Shuzhi abruptly took out a pitch-black wooden plaque. Without even looking back, he raised his hand and shook the plaque in front of the cat. Go Chang Chung had to wonder if his eyes were playing tricks on him. It looked for all the world as if text had flashed across Chu Shuzhi's face, right on his cheek, like the tattoos convicts had been forced to bear in ancient times. Daching's ears pricked up and his eyes widened. Chu Shuzhi held the plaque so fiercely that his fingers turned blue. Prominent veins popped out on the back of his hand. Then, without a word, he stalked out. Immediately turning to Go Chang Chung, Daching said, "Xiaogo, get a taxi and see your Chugo home." Go Chang Chung had only the faintest idea of what was going on. Daching spoke again, even more sternly. "He had too much to drink. Make sure you take him home. You can't come back until you've gotten him home and made sure he's absolutely fine. Do you hear me?" Pulling out a tissue to wipe his hands, Go Chang Chung jogged out after Chu Shuzhi and grabbed his bag from him. It was as though Chu Shuzhi had lost his soul. He just let Go Chang Chung take what was in his hands with absolutely no reaction. From behind, he was extremely skinny, practically just skin and bones. Shen Wei had only just left with Zhao Yunlan, who was thoroughly drunk, when the beer-bellied supervisor at DCU unexpectedly called to say he needed a file urgently. Shen Wei was somewhat confused, but before he could ask for more details, his supervisor said goodbye and hung up with a speed that suggested his ass was on fire. With Zhao Yunlan stuck to him like a barnacle, Shen Wei had little choice but to head to his own frigid apartment. They'd barely gotten in the door when his supervisor called yet again to tell Shen Wei to bring the file to the university's west entrance. Zhao Yunlan rolled around on the soft sofa, then cracked his eyes open. Still a little, it will not happen again, still a little bleary from the booze, he said, "On the first day of Lunar New Year, what's that fatty's problem?" Shen Wei was multitasking, looking for the requested file with one hand while cushioning Zhao Yunlan's head with the other to keep him from banging it on the coffee table. File found, he tucked a cushion behind Zhao Yunlan's head. "I'll be back soon. I need to take a nap." Zhao Yunlan's voice was nearly as sticky as his eyelids. Voice low, Shen Wei asked, "Do you want some water?" Zhao Yunlan turned his head away, batting at his hands. "No." Zhao Yunlan's eyes seemed to glisten. His lips were a vivid red and his long brows slanted up toward his hair. With his head slightly raised, the line of his jaw was stretched taut. His unbuttoned shirt showed off a long, impossibly attractive throat. Shen Wei's breath hitched. He carefully smoothed back the stray hairs on Zhao Yunlan's forehead before pulling a blanket over him. He gently caressed Zhao Yunlan's lips with his thumb. Despite his reluctance to leave, he finally leaned down and kissed Zhao Yunlan's forehead, then grabbed the file his supervisor wanted as well as his car keys and headed out. A little while later, Zhao Yunlan heard the sound of the door being carefully opened and shut. And then Zhao Yunlan, who had been apparently too drunk to walk straight just moments earlier, sat up like a reanimated corpse. Why didn't I see that coming? You would think that I'd learn. We're a little over halfway through Volume 2. You'd think I'd learn. He took out his phone and texted, "Keep him busy for a while," then called a moving company he had already been in touch with. The mover had never received such a weird job before and was hesitant. if the owner isn't here, shouldn't we? There's no we. Hurry and get this stuff out of here, Zhao Yunlan commanded. He's going to end up on my household register sooner or later. Am I supposed to have two addresses in the same household register? Just looking at all his single-use belongings pisses me off. Be here in 5 minutes. Got it? Zhao Yunlan hung up, took a pad of sticky notes from his bag, and quickly started making 2 lists. The things to be moved and the things he planned to throw out and replace for Shen Wei. Then his pen paused as an incredibly perverted thought took root. Where does Shen Wei keep his underwear, especially the ones he's already worn? He had recently managed to force Shen Wei to reluctantly stay with him in his tiny apartment, but in the process, he had wound up maintaining the excellent tradition of starting from affection while restrained by etiquette. During his half-month of blindness, despite his ulterior motives, Zhao Yunlan hadn't quite managed to obtain his heart's desire. He spent his days and nights under the same roof as his beloved, but he could neither see nor consume him. It was a heroic feat of cultivation, both physically and mentally. He felt as though he was on the verge of being able to take a monk's ascetic vows. You drove me to this. Zhao Yunlan rubbed his hands together and went out on Shen Wei's balcony. It might have been because Shen Wei hadn't stayed there in a long time, but the clothes hangers that were still on the balcony were empty. Zhao Yunlan didn't give up. He opened the huge wardrobe in the living room, only to find it contained the shirts and pants Shen Wei normally wore, but nothing else. There weren't even any socks. Zhao Yunlan's eyesight was still recovering, so he didn't see the little storage bin in the wardrobe, covered by a long trench coat. Undeterred, he turned his sights to Shen Wei's bedroom, which was always closed. Upon inspection, the bedroom door didn't have a handle, nor an obvious lock. Zhao Yunlan got out a little flashlight and shone it into the crack of the door, but couldn't find a hinge or any hidden locks. It got weirder by the minute. Trying to figure things out, Zhao Yunlan pressed his palms to the door and looked at it with his heavenly eye. Finally, something was revealed. Faint patterns on the door. Within the pitch-black wood, some sort of energy seemed to be flowing. It was gentle and just, tight and meticulous. It carried an unspeakable aura of magnificent dignity. Zhao Yunlan kept feeling around, and then suddenly there was a surge of familiarity. He found himself mumbling, "The Lock of Kunlun." Recently, while keeping it secret from everyone, he had been researching Kunlun with Sungzan's help. But other than the fact that Kunlun Mountain was incredible and ancient, and that some odd schools of thought, concepts, and inventions had named themselves after Kunlun, he hadn't found anything useful. The Lock of Kunlun was described in a book he'd happened to skim through. According to legend, the lock was round on top and square on the bottom, with the circle representing the heavens and the square representing the earth. In between, the 14 lock latches representing the 6 directions and 8 compass points. That comes with a footnote. The 8 compass points in 6 directions represents all of space. The 8 compass points are north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, and northwest. The 6 directions are above, below, left, right, forward, behind. You know, you'd think my eye would snag on a freaking footnote. There we are. It was so old that it predated the 64 hexagrams. There was only the concept of yin and yang, which made it all the more bizarre, unpredictable, and hard to grasp. What was in Shen Wei's bedroom that needed the Lock of Kunlun? Or rather, what was the connection between the soul executing emissary and Kunlun? Why was Shen Wei so familiar with such an ancient seal? Zhao Yunlan hesitated in front of the door for a moment longer. Then he reached out tentatively, concentrating on his palm and carefully guiding his power, and flicked the Kunlun lock. The lock was immediately activated. The 14 latches rose, one after another, yin and yang coexisting. At first, it was almost overwhelming. Zhao Yunlan had too many thoughts, messy and unrefined, and sometimes his imagination was too far-ranging. Generally speaking, he didn't share Chu Shuzhi's talent with such detailed things. But for some reason, faced with the Kunlun lock, he felt an innate familiarity. It was as if he could see every change, as if every shifting latch corresponded precisely to some natural rhythm of his heart. His fingers danced across the door as though someone were guiding his hand. No comment. The sun and moon rise and fall, thus completing the cycle. Follow the 36 pillars until, with a click, the utterly black door slowly swung inward, just the tiniest crack. The door was open, and the room beyond was completely devoid of light. Suddenly hesitant, Zhao Yunlan stood at the doorway. He was beginning to regret opening the door at all, but the fact remained that it was open, so after a bit of pacing, he turned on his phone's flashlight and carefully ventured inside. A subtle, ancient fragrance of ink drifted through the room, along with the scent of paper, and the walls were covered in paintings? Zhao Yunlan raised his phone, squinting hard at his surroundings, and stood stunned by what he saw. The paintings covered every inch of the walls. Large and small, depicting anger or laughter, they were all the same person. Zhao Yunlan's hands trembled so violently that his phone nearly fell to the floor. The last trace of tipsiness evaporated. Eventually, the beam of light made its way to an ancient ink painting on the southern wall. It was huge, nearly occupying the entire wall on its own. The paper was as thin as a cicada's wing, the surface as smooth as snow, and like all the others, it was a painting of a person. The person was drawn with delicate brows and an almost lifelike expression. His long hair reached the ground, and he wore the simplest green robe imaginable. His head was tilted slightly, lips curved, and the faintest hint of a smile. The brushwork was so vivid that it seemed the man might step out of the painting at any moment, and it was clearly none other than Zhao Yunlan himself. Oh, the painting! Shut the fuck up. Ooh, hang on. We got art. Excuse me. Pardon me. I would really like to know the process by which they figured out and chose which things to make art for, which moments to make art for. I would like this information. This would be good for me to know. Because it's perfect. It's simply perfect. They make the right decision every single time. Along the edge of the painting was a small line of text. It wasn't modern simplified or traditional Chinese. In fact, it wasn't any sort of writing he was familiar with. Zhao Yunlan had never laid eyes on it before, and yet somehow one quick look told him exactly what it said. Laying eyes on Kunlun Jun for the first time, in the shades of the grove, a single fleeting glance, and the melody of my heart faltered. By Wei. Just that would be page 191. We're just gonna write that down. Was he, Zhao Yunlan, the mountain god of the great wild? 10 minutes later, the movers knocked on the door of Shen Wei's apartment, and a weird man stepped out. Without a single word of explanation, he told them that the move wasn't happening. Then he got out his wallet, paid the moving fees anyway, and said to consider it his apology for making them come all that way for nothing. The moment Shen Wei laid eyes on his supervisor, he knew someone had deliberately lured him out. His heart sank. As soon as the man turned away, Shen Wei struck his shoulder heavily from behind. In an arctic tone, he demanded, "Who told you to summon me?" The oppressive authority in his voice suppressed his supervisor's soul within his body, rendering him unable to move. The man's eyes went absolutely empty, as if he were nothing but a soulless meat suit. His blank gaze was fixed straight ahead. Shen Wei added more pressure through his hand. "Speak," he commanded. No secrets could be kept when faced with the soul-executing blade, which could discern right from wrong, kindness from evil. Shen Wei watched as his supervisor seemed to slip further away by the second, unable to say anything. He understood that this mortal's memory had been tampered with. Shen Wei left without a backward glance, anxious fury filling his mind with hundreds of possible scenarios. He was, after all, a gentleman. It could never have crossed his mind that someone might go to such lengths to lure him away just to move his belongings and steal a couple pairs of underwear. He raced back to his own apartment. When he flung the door open and found no one in the living room, icy dread gripped his heart. As he stood frozen in the doorway, an uncontrollable desire to kill boiled up inside him. The urge awakened like a vast dragon that had lain dormant for countless years, jarred into wakefulness by an assault on its weak spot. Ever since Zhao Yunlan's eyes had been injured due to Shen Wei's own carelessness, a string in his heart had been stretched taut, and now the sight of the empty living room threatened to snap it. Shen Wei's eyes grew red, but at that moment, the sound of a voice on the balcony brought him back to himself. With tremendous effort, he just barely managed to snap out of it. Moving faster than the eye could see, he was out on the balcony at once. Zhao Yunlan was leaning on the windowsill of the enclosed balcony, smoking lazily as he cursed into the phone. "I don't want stone. Marble is too ugly. I know. What? White marble? I'm not fucking renovating the Forbidden Palace. Listen, just do the job properly and well, and I'll give you whatever rebate you're owed as a bonus. No, not 1 cent less, all right? Just don't turn my house into a karaoke bar. But I swear if you dare fuck with me, you're dead." Shen Wei's heart, which had leapt into his throat, thudded heavily back into his chest. That was when he realized he had actually broken out in a cold sweat. Even his palms were clammy. Zhao Yunlan heard the noise, tilted his head, and saw him. He immediately broke into a big grin. To the person on the other end of the phone, he said, "Enough bickering about all this crap. Just make sure you use non-toxic materials. I still need to live in the place. I don't want to feel like I'm trudging through a biochemical war zone with the stink of formaldehyde lingering for hundreds of years. Okay, enough talk. I'm hanging up." He stubbed out his cigarette and leaned against the windowsill, spreading his arms wide. In a smarmy, provocative voice, he said, "Come here, babe. Come give your husband a hug." I can't hit anything. God damn it. When I rearrange, I am rearranging my entire room and therefore my whole filming setup. I am rearranging this at the end of the year. And boy, when I tell you that one of my priorities when rearranging my entire freaking room and setup is to make sure that there is some place in this vicinity, wherever this winds up, for me to hit something with the book that I'm reading. Just because of this man. Teasing Shen Wei had already become a habit. Most of the time, Shen Wei ignored it, but this time, he walked over and swept Zhao Yunlan into his arms. Burying his face in the dip of Zhao Yunlan's shoulder, he slipped his arms around Zhao Yunlan's waist, pulling him away from the windowsill and closing the window. "Don't you know it's cold out?" Zhao Yunlan stretched his shoulders, then contentedly rested his chin on Shen Wei's shoulder. The warmth coming from Shen Wei's body and hands made him close his eyes in satisfaction. A hint of a subtle, peaceful smile spread across his face, like a big cat that had eaten and drunk its fill. Shen Wei felt that he was acting a little strange. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." The words seemed to roll around and around in his mouth before he spoke it aloud. He studied Shen Wei's profile mere centimeters away, then said, expression unchanging, "I'm overwhelmed and flattered to have gained the favor of a great beauty. Of course, if I'm allowed a taste of these sweet lips, I'll be even more lost." Can I find my place again? No, I really can't. There we are. While Shen Wei was processing that, Zhao Yunlan gave him a quick peck on the lips, then nimbly broke free before Shen Wei could react. Let me wash my face and sober up, then we can go pick up Da Qing and I'll take you home. Zhao Yunlan didn't breathe a word about the lock of Kunlun or anything else he had seen in that bedroom. Zhao Yunlan and Da Qing had fully intended to go home empty-handed, bringing nothing but their mouths. Shen Wei, on the other hand, wasn't shameless enough to freeload. So, Zhao Yunlan, who couldn't stop yawning, found himself dragged out shopping while Shen Wei bought heaps of New Year's gifts. The closer they got to Zhao Yunlan's family home, the more nervous Shen Wei became. If he weren't a gentleman of his word, he might very well have made his escape long before this point. Zhao Yunlan's parents lived in a luxury apartment. Its sheer size made it seem a bit cold and lacking in cheer. When they walked in, the pair could only faintly hear the sounds of activity in the kitchen. 2 brand-new pairs of slippers were waiting for them just inside the front door. Da Qing jumped down from Zhao Yunlan's arms, padded over to the kitchen door, and gave an adorable meow. As Zhao Yunlan changed into slippers, he muttered, "You old-ass cat, still putting on a cute act. Don't you have any shame?" Da Qing glowered fiercely over his shoulder. "Oh, is it that, Da Qing?" A woman's gentle voice came from the kitchen. She came out, dusting the flour off her hands, and scooped the black cat up. "Look how sleek and shiny you are! And how do you keep getting fatter and fatter?" Da Qing, mortally wounded, rested his fat paws on the lady of the house's hands, purring as though he had been wronged. Zhao Yunlan's mom took good care of herself. Her long hair was pulled back, displaying a long neck. At a glance, Zhao Yunlan didn't resemble her very much, but upon closer inspection, there was a vague shadow of her in his brows. But the lines of her face were gentle and refined, so even when she wasn't smiling, it appeared as though she was. All of this combined with the glasses perched on her nose to make her look like one of those mild, beautiful, well-educated upper-class ladies from ancient times. Fathers and sons do often have somewhat similar tastes in partners, after all. So I genuinely didn't see that one coming. Which is silly. Which is so silly. I could not be sillier about that, but that legitimately clocked me just now. I did not. God. But when this upper-class lady laid eyes on Zhao Yunlan, her expression transformed. She almost seemed to sprout fangs. "What are you laughing about? Aren't you scared your mouth will spring a leak from laughing so hard? Get your ass in here." Zhao Yunlan obediently got his ass in there. As he moved out of the way, his mother finally got a look at Shen Wei and froze. Recovering quickly, she rinsed the remaining flour off her hands and pushed her glasses up before saying, every bit the gracious hostess, "Oh, you must be Xiao Shen." Zhao Yunlan casually put an arm around Shen Wei's shoulders and pushed him toward her. "Didn't I find you a lovely daughter-in-law?" Shen Wei was too embarrassed to speak. But given Zhao Yunlan's habit of spewing sheer nonsense, his mom didn't take him seriously at all. When she saw the load Shen Wei was carrying, she said, "Oh, you sweetheart, when you come to eat at Auntie's house, you don't need to bring anything but yourself." "It was all me." Zhao Yunlan pointed at his own nose. "Me! I bought that." His mom grabbed her rolling pin and swung it at him as if by habit. "You buying? If you had that kind of awareness, I could have died peacefully ages ago. Go pour some water for our guest and then come out rolling dumpling skins for me. All you know how to do is come home right at dinner time, just in time to be fed." Oh, she is a mom. With his back floured from the rolling pin, Zhao Yunlan dared not say a word of protest. "Oh." Shen Wei gingerly took a seat, his spine ramrod straight. In the kitchen, Zhao Yunlan's lack of skill was earning him whacks from the rolling pin for his uneven and misshapen dumpling skins. He shrugged and bore it, only half trying to dodge, and quietly pleaded, "Can you spare me some dignity in front of him?" All you do is eat, his mother scolded. You don't do a thing. There are 365 days in a year, and you barely come home once. What's the point in raising you? You think you have any dignity? Get out of the way. Zhao Yunlan moved out of her way with a smile, but he didn't leave the kitchen. He watched her flit busily about, then stole a look around. Where's the maid who usually cooks for you? And where's Dad? How come the family beauty's the only one home today? She went home for the new year, and your dad has a work thing tonight. Good. Zhao Yunlan let out a sigh of relief, then lowered his voice. If Dad knew about this, he'd beat me to death. She glanced back at him. What did you do this time? Nothing, really. Zhao Yunlan's gaze drifted sideways toward the chopstick holder. His vision still hadn't fully recovered, so he squinted subconsciously. Keeping a close eye on his mother's expression, he tentatively began. It's just... Then he sighed. Mom, how do you feel about gay people? She clearly didn't make the connection. Their sexuality is becoming more socially accepted these days. Why? We're talking about your treasonous crimes here. Don't change the subject. That is my treasonous crime, Zhao Yunlan said honestly. I'm writing that down. Writing that the fuck down. Excuse me. That's a line for the ages. Pardon me. Excuse me. That's page 197. That is my treasonous crime, Zhao Yunlan said honestly. Don't be all technical about it. I wanted to ask what you'd do if one day your son came out of the closet. If you want to keep bullshitting, you can... Mom. He cut her off and fixed her with an unusually intent look. I'm serious. This isn't a joke. The rolling pin hit the floor as her hands went slack. She stared at him blankly. Zhao Yunlan sighed again and bent down to retrieve the rolling pin. The tension in his back was faintly visible through his shirt. I'm afraid Dad won't be able to accept it, so I'm telling you first. I've thought it over, and I can't hide it or put off telling you. You're the only mom I've got. She still seemed dumbfounded. Finally, stumbling over her words, she said, Is he... The man you brought with you, is he... Zhao Yunlan nodded. He had both hands on the door, as though blocking it with his body. I, your son, spent over half a year doing everything I could, cajoling and lying, consulting all 36 stratagems and 72 transformations. I used every trick I know. It would have been easier to start an uprising. And now he's finally mine. If you feel like you need to kill or maim someone, come at me, but please don't go out there and ruin all my hard work. It'll break my heart. There are a few ways that this could have been done a little bit better. Zhao Yunlan. However, just for all involved, Shen Wei included, but also Zhao Yunlan included. Timing, presentation, letting people know. Lots of things. My heart's in my throat. To an onlooker, it would have appeared as though her soul had left her body. Her eyes far away, Zhao Yunlan's mother began robotically wrapping dumplings without another word. Mom? His voice didn't reach her. For a minute or two, she was simply in a daze, completely unaware of what she was doing or what she had just heard. She was on autopilot. Suddenly, after Zhao Yunlan's repeated attempts to talk to her, she snapped out of it. Words began tumbling from her mouth before she could think. What about your job? Will people gossip about you? What about your future? That's right, I think your dad said you bought a house a few days ago. Do you still have money? Zhao Yunlan blinked, not at all sure how she jumped from him coming out to him not having money. If there was any logic there, he couldn't see it. It seemed like she'd latched onto a few key terms and strung them into random sentences, and they all rushed out at once. His mother was a highly educated intellectual who had never needed to worry about the mundane daily necessities. His father had always doted on her so much that she didn't really have any worries or anxieties to deal with. As a result, she'd always been easygoing and accepting, considering that Zhao Yunlan's coming out strategy had been simple and straightforward. If his mom came around and accepted it, his dad would follow suit. He had imagined many possible ways she might take the news. He'd supposed she might get angry and be unable to accept it at first, but then after calming down, perhaps she'd suggest that they take a few hours and have a proper chat. Alternatively, like many other mothers, she might have turned into a census taker and started asking after Shenwei's family tree. But Zhao Yunlan hadn't expected this half-panicked, frightened reaction, perhaps because he himself had never been a parent. He opened his mouth, but had no idea what to say. Eventually, she calmed down a little. Chopsticks in hand, she paused and asked, "Are you fooling around, or have you really thought this through?" "How could I fool around about something like this? If you got too upset and something were to happen to you, Dad would stew me for dinner." Lost, she slowly leaned to the side. More time passed before she finally said very quietly, Don't mention it to your father just yet. Let me think about it some more. What kind of person is this man? What does he do?" Before Zhao Yunlan could respond, she pinched her brow firmly. "Oh, that's right. You already told me he's a professor at Dragon City University. Where's his family from? Is his family okay with this? What's his character like? Does he have a good personality? Does he treat you well? You've had so many girlfriends before, so how come all of a sudden... If we have your blessing, no one under the sun would dare disagree. Dad has to look to you now, doesn't he? As for what Shenwei is like," Zhao Yunlan smiled, "to me it's like people say. He's like the finest polished jade, completely unique. Once you talk to him, you'll understand. And yes, I've had girlfriends, but I've been with 2 guys before too. Though for him, I'll kiss every trace of straightness goodbye." Maybe we ease her into this, Zhao Yunlan. Granted, you've done absolutely nothing so far that's been easing her into anything. However, ease her into this a little bit more. She's coming around. She's getting there. She's processing. Maybe we don't shock her fucking system, okay? Maybe we just keep talking to her, answering questions. Maybe we save the innuendo for a couple of months down the line at least, when she's had more than 2 seconds to process this. Parents often feel moved as well as delighted when they see someone deeply in love with their child, but when it's the other way around, they have mixed feelings. Zhao Yunlan's mom, currently in the mixed feeling stage, huffily said, "Oh, please, like I'd believe that." Zhao Yunlan's expression didn't change, but his heart started creeping up into his throat until his mother added, "If he's as great as you say, how could he fall for you? Can he see a thing with those glasses?" This is such a specific mother. Oh, shit. That was the end of the chapter, by the way. Although she did kind of immediately strike me as the type of mom to be like, my kid's partner, perfect, beautiful, can never do any wrong, is immediately wonderful and amazing, and I will heap them with praise, and they will never ever do anything wrong in my eyes ever. My child, on the other hand, I will criticize into oblivion. She was already giving me that vibe, and now we're here. It's very, very specific and very, very real vibe here. We're on page 201 for chapter 14, and it is 4:01 p.m., so we're going to take this opportunity to take a break and take a walk around the house, maybe. I'm going to grab some more tea. Go do something nice. That is one rule. We have one rule for today's break. No doom scrolling. Okay? None. No doom scrolling. Go get a snack. Tea, coffee, what have you. Go walk around your living room. Watch a cat video. Look at me. Do not doom scroll. You have this 10-minute break. Do not doom scroll. Go touch something soft, hug someone, grab something warm, and we'll be back in 10 minutes, okay? I love you very much. I'll be right back. We are back. Alrighty. We are on page 201 for chapter 14. Octagonal, up there somewhere in the chat, had the comment of the day by pointing out that Zhao Yunlan's treatment of Da Qing makes a whole lot of sense now. Very well spotted there, Octagonal. So, Chu Shuzhi got into the taxi, gave an address, and leaned back in the seat without another word, eyes firmly closed. The whole way, Go Changcheng snuck peeks at him, unable to shake the impression that Chuga's face was covered in a layer of gray. Go Changcheng accompanied him the entire ride. And when they arrived at their destination, it wasn't until Chu Shuzhi had gotten out of the car that Go Changcheng realized he was still holding Chu Shuzhi's bag. He hurried to catch up. "Chuga, your bag!" He accepted the bag without even lifting his eyes. You can go now." Chu Shuzhi's house was in a very deep alleyway that formed a wind tunnel. Bitter wind swept under Chu Shuzhi's collar, inflating his wide jacket until it seemed he might be blown away. Keeping Da Qing's instructions at the front of his mind, Go Changcheng followed Chu Shuzhi's every step. Chu Shuzhi's brow furrowed. "I said you can go. Did you not understand?" Nervously, Go Changcheng said, Da Qing told me to take you home. I can't leave until I'm sure you're safely inside." Very quietly dying, Chu Shuzhi stopped walking. Pinning Go Changcheng with a vicious glare and a voice that promised suffering, he said, "You take me home. Don't you know I'm not human?" An "ah" escaped Go Changcheng, as if he were intimidated. But when Chu Shuzhi turned and resumed walking, he once again heard footsteps behind him. Would nothing stop the young idiot? I'm okay. I'm alright. I'm okay. It's fine. 4-alarm fire in my head, but it's fine. It's okay. Wheeling around, Chu Shuzhi closed the distance between them. Why, no, I don't care about context, thank you. He made no effort to conceal his musty, sinister energy, which overwhelmed Go Changcheng. 2 fangs were visible between his narrow lips. "Do you know what human flesh tastes like? It's both smooth and rich on the tongue. The cartilage cracks between your teeth, the organs are pungent, and when you pull them out of the abdomen, they're still steaming hot." Expression full of malice, he stared straight into Go Changcheng's horrified face as he swept his tongue over his lips. "Do you know how I know? Because I'm a zombie that eats humans." There's a change from the show. For rather obvious reasons, zombies don't make it on Chinese television, let alone certain types of zombies. Go Changcheng shuddered. I'm like, fine, It's fine. This is fine. This is a belated Halloween gift to me. His courage must surely have been cut off at birth along with his umbilical cord. He was afraid of everything, so how could he not fear the unpredictable Chu Shuzhi? But in this secluded, quiet alleyway, even as he looked at Chu Shuzhi's fangs and found it all too easy to picture them stained with blood, the appropriate fear just never came. What? In fact, the thought that flashed through his mind was incredibly bizarre. No wonder Chuga doesn't eat peas. Sure that he'd finally terrified Go Cheng Chung, Chu Shuzhi snorted and resumed walking. Yet, astonishingly, Go Cheng Chung seemed to have finally found his courage and was once again following him. What, are you going to follow a zombie into his coffin? He demanded. Go Cheng Chung stood silent and still. Chu Shuzhi finally ran out of patience. Fuck off, he roared. In a tiny, almost whiny voice, Go Cheng Chung said, Da Qing told me to take you home and we're not there yet. Before Go Cheng Chung could finish speaking, he was grabbed and pinned up against the wall. Chu Shuzhi's bony hands were like steel, icy cold as they gripped him by the throat. Dangling by his neck with his feet off the ground, Go Cheng Chung quickly found himself unable to breathe. He kicked and struggled fruitlessly. Chu Shuzhi's gaze was frigid. At such close range, Go Cheng Chung noticed that there was a slight dullness to his pupils. It wasn't normally obvious, but in direct sunlight those eyes held a subtle hint of death. I don't owe a thing to the heavens or earth. My conscience is clean. I've been atoning for my crimes for 300 years. I paid it all off ages ago. Who the fuck do they think they are? What right do they have to judge me? Chu Shuzhi squeezed these final words out from between his teeth. If that's how it is, why shouldn't I actually commit the crimes they're accusing me of? Go Cheng Chung's eyes started to water. He really was a snot spirit, quick to cry, with a soft personality and weak spine. As he stared back at Chu Shuzhi, his expression was full of disbelief, pleading, and a little sadness, but not much anger. When he managed to open his mouth, no sound came out. The shape of his lips seemed to be forming Chuga. Okay, listen. All right. I feel like we've grown closer, you and I, in the past couple of minutes. I feel like you and me, man. Yep. Read to filth on my own live stream. It's okay. I'm okay with it. It's fine. Go Cheng Chung was a person made of mud. If you were to hit him, he wouldn't make a sound. All you got out of it was a mucky hand. Suddenly, Chu Shuzhi didn't see the point in bothering with him. He let go, dumping Go Cheng Chung to the ground, then stood there indifferently as Go Cheng Chung coughed up a lung. Yeah! Oh, it's so good. Remember what I said about art? The choices that they're making? No, I'm sorry. We know exactly what kind of people chose the art moments in this book. We know because they are extremely similar to at least me. I don't know about you, but every single fucking choice they've made so far proves that they are a person like me. For whatever that is worth to you. Whew. Okay. I'll just angle that properly for you there. Yeah. Just gonna give you a moment with that. The young man was truly a little tale. Every day he carried a little notebook around, following Chu Shuzhi everywhere, taking note of everything and meticulously writing down every word anyone said, up to and including Qing calling someone a stupid human. In ancient times, he would have been like a little eunuch, keeping record of the emperor's daily life. A thick layer of glowing merits emanated from Go Changcheng, who was about to cough his trachea into a bow. The impossibly white light seared Chu Shuzhi's eyes. The hand that gripped Go Changcheng's neck suddenly lifted and came to rest on that messy bird's nest atop his head. Go Changcheng shivered instinctively. Chu Shuzhi patted the top of the man's head, voice calmer and a bit tired now, as he said, "You didn't study properly as a kid, did you? Have you read The Injustice to Do-yi? It clearly states that those who act in kindness often suffer through poverty and live short lives, while those who do evil enjoy riches and long lives. Do you remember that?" Go Changcheng really wasn't wired for studying. At the end of every year, he'd return everything he'd learned that year right back to the teacher, every last bit. So now he just squatted on the ground, looking up at Chu Shuzhi with a blank expression. Chu Shuzhi tipped Go Changcheng's chin up and examined him for a while. Sorry, that took about half a second to register what the fuck I was reading. All right, we're gonna redo that one. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. I'm okay. Don't tell me that, Epic. Don't say nothing about having not even gotten close to your favorite art yet. Don't do that to me. I'm already fragile, okay? I'm already. Whew. Chu Shuzhi tipped Go Changcheng's chin up and examined him for a while. Your forehead is somewhat flat and narrow, which means the fate linking you and your parents is shallow. Your ears are thin, which means your youth was full of troubles. The middle third of your nose bridge protrudes a bit, which means you will lose the protection of your elders after you leave middle age, and the latter half of your life will be unpredictable. Overall, your face says you'll have a hard life and ultimately won't amount to much. There's no point in collecting so many merits. Donating money and doing good will only make you even poorer. Try to be smarter from now on. Live in comfort like the Nepo baby you are. Enjoy what you should and live a good few days while you can. Go Changcheng kept looking up at him, confused. You really are a bit dense, Chu Shuzhi said. The two of them stared at each other for a while, and then reached out and pulled Go Changcheng up. And then he reached out and pulled Go Changcheng up. Go give the cat Yao a message for me. What could I possibly do? I'm just a minor character at the mercy of others. Don't worry, I'm not stupid enough to look for trouble, and I won't try to kill myself. I'm taking a few days off to clear my mind, and I'll be back after the 15th, once the Lunar New Year is over. Then, like mist evaporating, he disappeared right in front of Go Changcheng's eyes. Sorry, what page? Where am I? What's happening? The empty alleyway held the sulfurous. Shit. I can't even remember which syllables to emphasize. I'm okay. Smell of firecracker debris. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, the street seemed a little bleak and empty. The swirling cold wind lifted a stray strand of hair atop Go Changcheng's head, face still tear-stained. He sniffled. Chu Shuzhi hadn't really seemed like he was trying to convince Go Changcheng. Rather, it had seemed like he was just grumbling about his own circumstances. The thing about grumbling was that there was no rhyme or reason to it. Whether or not someone was blessed by fortune was decided at birth. What did it have to do with what kind of life he chose to lead or what he chose to do? Go Changcheng had always thought he was a useless, irredeemable person who had taken advantage of all sorts of resources that someone like him didn't deserve, so he always tried to tread carefully. He worked hard to do what he could, as much as he could, but it really couldn't be considered benevolent or compassionate. He just wanted to feel a little more useful. He never anticipated getting anything in return. But despite all that, having someone explain precisely why he was destined not to have a good life still made Go Changcheng feel a little put out. With that gloom weighing on his heart, he headed home. That's a scene break, by the way, which, Jesus Christ, did I need a break from this scene? After leaving Zhao Yunlan's family home, Shen Wei felt like he just endured a huge tribulation. Because he had. He was exhausted in both heart and mind. While he'd been careful not to reveal anything in front of Zhao Yunlan's mom, her eyes constantly scanned him like x-rays trying to discover his inner secrets. He felt like all that excess radiation was about to part his flesh from his bones. That was an excellent and well-placed analogy. I see you, priest. Why did your mother keep looking at me like that? He asked. Did I unknowingly slip up in some way? Da Qing, who was flopped belly down on his container of dried fish, responded before Zhao Yunlan could. Lao Zhao used to fuck around all over the place and had a bit of a reputation. I think his mom is just a little traumatized. Shen Wei didn't want to seem unreasonable, but hearing this, he couldn't help his darkening expression. Damn, fatty, if you keep spouting bullshit, I will throw you out of this car, Zhao Yunlan said flatly. Da Qing raised his tail. Meow. Zhao Yunlan glared harshly at the cat in the rearview mirror. Don't think too much of it. Before, I never brought anyone to meet her. And it wasn't you in particular she was being paranoid about. It was because earlier when we were making dumplings, I accidentally came out to her. Accidentally? Impulsively, I think. I think is the word you're looking for. Shen Wei didn't know how to react. Oh, Da Qing said, brave warrior. Shen Wei found his voice. You told your mom? I told her my love for you can stir up a storm and shatter the world. Okay. All right. No. No. They got to stop doing this. This isn't good for me. They have to stop this casual, sporadic dumping of the most romantic bullshit you ever heard in your entire life, said like it's nothing, popping up like it's nothing, and throwing me into cardiac arrest. You can't be doing this, priest. This is against the rules, okay? Where even am I? All right. If she gives her blessing, she gets to have a second son from now on. Buy one, get one free. That's a phenomenal deal. And if she doesn't, I'll kill myself for love and she won't have any sons. My mom's smart. She'll do the math. Don't worry. That's fucking it. Okay. I am so close to flying out of this chair. The ice is thin. Da Qing tore him down mercilessly. Dream on, as if you'd ever dare talk to the Empress Dowager like that. Shenloshe, there's flour on his pants, right? I bet he prostrated himself in the kitchen. Then he addressed Zhao Yunlan directly. You even chose a day when the Grand Emperor wouldn't be home. How amazing you are! Zhao Yunlan didn't answer. Lacking the patience to watch them flirt, Da Qing changed the subject. Oh, right. Lao Zhao, I have something to tell you. Did you know Lao Chu's merit shackles were due to come off today? Today? It took a second for Zhao Yunlan to react. Has it already been 300 years? What did he say? With the shackles off, he'll be free from now on. Is he going to leave the SID? Don't get ahead of yourself, Da Qing said. The netherworld wouldn't take them off. Why? How would I know? Probably some garbage like he hasn't collected enough merits, as if there's even a quota. They never name a target for how many merits someone has to collect, and they're the ones who say whether the target's been hit or not. That sounds a little too real. It's so funny how I can't specify in this moment, but damn, that's a little too real. That hits some kind of religious button. But that basic premise, though, of we get to tell you when you're done, and there's no firm line. You can't gauge it, we do. That feels extremely true to life in ways that I apparently cannot currently articulate. Chu Shuzhi wears merit shackles, asked Shenwei. Dutching nodded. Sometimes when the soul guarding order is short-staffed, the guardian will go to the netherworld and borrow a convict. I guess it's a kind of labor reform. Prisons, things like that. That just feels very real to me. Shenwei understood. There's nothing we can do then. Most prisoners the netherworld manages to catch are small, powerless ghosts. Not much use at all. Anyone with real power will usually put up a fight unless they go willingly for some reason. So when they finally manage to shackle someone with real abilities, of course they have to squeeze every last drop out of him. Prolonging the sentence on the merit shackles seems to be normal practice. Another century or two would be typical. Oh, honey. That's that programming kicking right in. Zhao Yunlan didn't say anything, but his gaze was a little cold. Everyone had their own plans and calculations. That was just how things were. Zhao Yunlan wasn't some sheltered, naive fool who didn't know how the world worked. It was one thing if, in the big picture, things were still going in the right direction. People could have their own little games of chess under the table and take advantage of each other. It wasn't a big deal. But recently, signs of the other side secretly dipping their hands in kept cropping up. Whether Zhao Yunlan said anything or not, he was still irritated. Why was Chu Shuzhi put in merit shackles? Can you tell me? Asked Shenwei. From the back seat, Dacheng looked at Shenwei with his eerie, feline eyes. Shenwei seemed intimately acquainted with the unwritten rules of the netherworld. Who exactly was he? Dacheng thought it over. Finally, slowly, he said, Chu Shuzhi's cultivation path is necromancy. Dying, becoming one of the undead, and finding this path was something he basically stumbled into. Most people who dabble in necromancy are giant weirdos, and they're all heretics in their own ways. Chu Shuzhi is more mild-mannered than your average necromancer. Chu Shuzhi, mild-mannered, are you sure? So his peers thought he was the one on an immoral path. Back then, Chu Shuzhi got into it accidentally. He was a solitary cultivator, so he barely knew the rules and taboos. Shenlasha's scope and depth of knowledge are as impressive as his efforts to hide them. You presumably know that a person's final resting place is the foundation for the cultivation of their necromancy. If their resting place is destroyed and they aren't powerful enough, their very essence may be damaged. Well, in this case, when someone chased a pet cricket all the way to a burial mound and lost it among all the unmarked graves, he had one grave dug up to look for it. Chu Shuzhi's. When he still couldn't find the cricket, he burned down the entire burial mound in his rage. Fortunately, by that point, Chu Shuzhi had already ascended through the restraints of the earthly gates and was on his way to the heavenly pass, so he no longer feared the sun. His actual body wasn't in the grave, so he wasn't severely injured. Cultivation depends on cause and effect, no matter who or what is doing it. Someone wrecked Chu Shuzhi's cultivation for no reason, and you reap what you sow. That's how the world works. Of course he was going to take revenge. This was Zhao Yunlan's first time hearing the story, too. And then what happened? He asked. Then Chu Shuzhi found him, hung him up to bleed him dry, cured the meat, and ate him, Dacheng said. Trouble was, the person who'd done all that was a child from an influential family. He'd been spoiled rotten his entire life, and when this all happened, he was only a day and a half shy of his 7th birthday. Hold, please. Zhao Yunlan didn't really understand. So what if they're not 7 yet? Is there some kind of rule? Shenwei explained quietly. Before a little Yao can cultivate a human form, the thing they most fear encountering is a child under 7. Children are young and naive. No matter what a child does, the heavens won't punish him. If a child catches and kills you, your only choice is to be resigned to that fate. There can be no vengeance. If you insist on pursuing revenge and harm a child, it's a major offense. This is what he's been accused of. That he's been talking about, and that he was just talking about. This is what they say he did. Fuck. By its very nature, cultivation went against the natural order of things. Only 1 in a million might succeed, and doing so required talent, hard work, and luck, especially luck. If this had happened to Zhao Yunlan, he might have thought that brat was a little bastard, but the worst he could do to them was cause a nightmare and mess with them a bit to scare them. If he didn't die or get badly hurt, there was no need to seriously harm a brat. There was a reason why the heavens don't punish children with their hair still down. That comes with a footnote. Children traditionally wore specific hairstyles depending on their age. Between the ages of 3 and 7, children would have typically worn their hair down. Children were naive and couldn't possibly understand their wrongdoings. Cultivating Yao could simply avoid them, or perhaps play dead or cast an illusion to get it over with. It wasn't that big a deal. And if avoiding the encounter proved truly impossible and the little Yao had to meet the child directly, it was probably due to something from a previous life, or someone being out to get them. Either way, it just went to show that fate is inescapable. Unfortunately, Necromancer Chu Shuzhi is exactly the kind of proud person to seek revenge over even a small slight. Rules be damned. Well, no one can push back against the heavens, but pushing back against the netherworld is fair game. Zhao Yunlan took his phone from his pocket and tossed it into the back seat. "Call Chu Shuzhi," he ordered. Da Qing deftly tapped away at the screen with his paw pads. On the first attempt, Chu Shuzhi hung up on him. "Call again," said Zhao Yunlan. On the third try, Chu Shuzhi turned off his phone. Zhao Yunlan hit the brakes and parked on the roadside. He took a soul-guarding order from his wallet, pulled out a pen, and quickly scribbled on the yellow paper, "Come see me at 4 Bright Avenue before midnight." He folded the soul-guarding order into a paper crane, which flew out the window. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Whew. Damn. Oh, by the way, we have a cameo today from Wei Ying. I still had tea from the first half left over, so I just made the fresh tea in a different mug, and I finished Shen Wei. So we have Wei Ying today. That was the end of the chapter, by the way. I keep forgetting if I ever mentioned that. We're on page 213 for chapter 15. Whew. Damn. A lot happening this stream. Jesus. Whew. Rather than driving home, Zhao Yunlan decided to drop by the place he'd just bought near Dragon City University before it got dark. It was only 1 street away from the university campus. The neighborhood was made up of a group of garden Western-style buildings with a very distinctive architectural style. Zhao Yunlan pulled out a ring of keys, removed one, and placed it in Shen Wei's hand. I know you don't actually need a key to get in, so it's mostly symbolic, but it's the spirit of the thing. It was almost as if the metal of the key burned Shen Wei's fingers. He curled them slightly. "For me?" "Of course. The key to our house." I would just like to know who Priest thinks she is. The audacity of this woman. I'm disliking her more and more every day, if you know what I mean. Zhao Yunlan led the way as he spoke. The plumbing, wiring, and interior walls are basically done now. They were working on the floors before the new year, so it's a little messy inside, but everything should be done in about a month. At that point, you can move your stuff in first and just keep the stuff you normally use at my place. We can move in properly in the spring after we air the place out for a while. Come on, the elevator's this way. Shen Wei felt as though his heart had been submerged in water. It was tender, soft, and swelling in his chest. Excuse me. Analogy. Shit. God. Great fucking metaphor. That's the other thing she clocks you with every now and then. Every now and then she will make some kind of comparison, analogy, metaphor, what have you, that is so precise and perfect, but unique. Never heard of a cliche, this woman. Just right in, evokes such a specifically visceral image, feeling, what have you, that perfectly communicates what she's trying to get across. This just pops up every now and then with her, and as somebody who struggles with metaphors in their own writing, I am very, very jealous. Whew. The building was 4 stories high, with 1 unit occupying each floor. The underground, 4 stories high, 1 unit occupying each floor. So there are 3 other floors. They have 3 neighbors, basically. All right. 1 unit occupying each floor. I suppose then it matters exactly how large this building is. The underground parking area was divided into, into what? Was divided into separate garages for each unit. And each private garage had its own elevator with direct access to their unit. When Shenwei and Zhao Yunlan reached theirs, they found construction debris still scattered all over the place, but the natural lighting inside was wonderful. Although the sun was currently setting, enough fading light trickled in, gilding the scraps strewn around the floor. The view out the windows on one side was of Dragon City University's Republican-era buildings, hidden by ancient trees. The other side overlooked a man-made creek that wound its way through the neighborhood. Even in the middle of winter, with the water drained, one could look down at it and see the marks the flowing water had carved into the stone. They say one should hide their mistress in a golden house, but I don't have the money for that. If I actually built one, I'd get investigated for corruption. So I hope you can be content with this for a while. Zhao Yunlan smiled. I'll save up slowly until we can upgrade to somewhere better. The master bedroom is the one on the south side with a balcony. Pick which of the others you'd like for your study. Shenwei took a long look at him. So much emotion and longing, so agonizingly repressed for thousands of years, and Zhao Yunlan had casually set it all ablaze with absolutely no warning. Appropriate. The intensity was rapidly reaching a breaking point, and with it, an indescribable sadistic urge welled up in Shenwei's heart. He ached to gather Zhao Yunlan in his arms and smother him there, to crush every bit of flesh and bone to dust and melt it in his palms, preserving this moment for eternity. We're not even done. The world inside his heart was collapsing, and yet in front of Zhao Yunlan, he couldn't bear to even draw a harsh breath. Only his gaze burned. That's very, okay, to be very honest, this reminds me of, dominant behavior. And that, like, rules or laws or boundaries or what have you that he has set up and it gets violated. But instead of that being like, it may also provoke feelings of like unease, and Zhao Yunlan is clearly way stepping over boundaries and everything. And that may be genuinely part of Shenwei's reaction, but there's also a deeply significant part that, for lack of a better phrase, you know, he also thinks it's hot. It also gets him going in both a romantic and sexual context. And that's very like, that's one of the things. The dominant sets up the rules so that the submissive can break them. And in that process, certain things are felt and enjoyed. So that reminds me. For example, if you've never seen the movie Secretary, which you should really watch, it's not gay, but it's about a dominant submissive relationship that evolves, right? If you've never seen that, similar thing. Very uptight, rigid, dominant finds it deeply hot when his rules get broken by the submissive. It's a whole thing, and I'm just saying words. I'm just speaking what I'm reminded of. Of course, when three's... I just whacked the shit out of the mic. Of course, when three's a crowd, someone must be the third wheel. Da Qing, possibly to prevent the two of them from simply falling to the debris-littered floor together and rolling around, jumped onto the windowsill and announced loudly, "I want my own bedroom too, and a luxurious cat tower." Oh, fuck off. Angry that the furball had ruined the mood, Zhao Yunlan grumbled, "Cat tower, even scaffolding wouldn't be able to hold your weight." "What did you say, you blind man?" Zhao Yunlan didn't bat an eye. "I'm saying you're fat." Furious, Da Qing launched right onto Zhao Yunlan's shoulder and buried his claws in Zhao Yunlan's hair, digging at it chaotically. And so, a fierce battle between human and cat began. Shenwei let out a slow breath, leaning sideways against the window. The warm, fading glow of the sunset brushed his skin, lending a touch of brightness to even his ever-pale complexion. As he quietly watched pandemonium break out in the living room, he couldn't help the small smile that made its way over his face. Now we're just in a slice of life donghua, okay? I'm sorry. The impeccable domesticity vibes. I can't. Ooh, they're hitting me in so many different places today. Oh no. I'm in danger. But a flicker of a black shadow on his sleeve dragged the corners of Shenwei's lips back down again. He pinched the shadow between his fingertips, transforming it into a letter. It read, "Black clouds have formed in the 33rd heaven to the northwest, a sign of vast inauspiciousness. Please return with all haste, my lord." Shenwei crumpled the letter in his fist. Yunlan. Zhao Yunlan and Da Qing turned toward him in tandem. "Something urgent has come up," Shenwei said. "I'll be gone for a while. If you have free time during the holiday, go back home and try to spend more time with your parents. Your eyes still haven't recovered." I keep hitting the mic. "Your eyes still haven't recovered. I'll worry less if they're caring for you." "What happened?" asked Zhao Yunlan. "I'm not sure." "The puppet delivered a letter from the netherworld that says black clouds have formed in the 33rd heaven. I'm afraid it might be serious. I must go investigate." Shenwei reached out and stroked Zhao Yunlan's creased brow with a fingertip. "Don't frown. No need to worry." Ordinary clouds couldn't reach up to the 33rd heaven. Clouds there were generally one of two kinds: the auspicious purple clouds from the east, or the inauspicious black clouds that cover everything. Da Qing said, "Black clouds haven't been seen in a long time. As far as I know, it's been 800 years since they last appeared." "What caused them last time?" Zhao Yunlan asked. Confused, the cat replied, "Why would I know?" But Shenwei didn't respond. He reflexively avoided Zhao Yunlan's gaze. Zhao Yunlan's gift for reading people was well above average, especially when it came to Shenwei, who wasn't good at hiding his thoughts. Something flashed through Zhao Yunlan's mind. Does it have something to do with Ghostface? Was it him the last time, too? What exactly is he? How is he so powerful? Da Qing was even more confused. Ghostface? Who's Ghostface? The trace of color that the setting sun had lent Shenwei's face was long gone. "I'm sorry, I can't say." "You see what I mean? You see what I mean? She planted an image and a meaning behind the fucking light on Shenwei's face, and then she chose the specific moment to bring it up again as to bring up its, in this case, its absence, to bring up the change. Because the last we had it, there was a light on his face, and then now it's long gone. And that communicates something on an intuitive and emotional level. She did that shit on purpose, just to hurt my feelings. Well, and now I can't find my place again. Hello. Knocked me clear up, thank you. Zhao Yunlan deflated, unable to bear seeing him like that. Despite wanting answers, he didn't press further. You should get going then. Be careful, I'll keep the door unlocked for you at night. Come back soon. With pardon me. With Da Qing there, Shen Wei didn't say anything. He just gave Zhao Yunlan a deep glance before walking into a cloud of black mist. Mind heavy, Zhao Yunlan walked to the balcony. He looked up at the slowly darkening sky and lit a cigarette. Da Qing was well and truly worried. He jumped onto the ledge and asked, Do you really know Shen Laosho's background? When Zhao Yunlan nodded silently, the cat cocked his head. Then what are you worried about? So many things. Zhao Yunlan blew a smoke ring and squinted in the white smoke. Da Qing, let me ask you something. Why is it that the literary classics discuss and dissect all the gossip about the gods, and yet they're completely silent about one person in particular? Who? Kunlun Jun. Da Qing opened his mouth, but no words came out. Cat and human were silent together for some time. Annoyed, Zhao Yunlan lit another cigarette. What, you can't tell me either? It's not that, said Da Qing, but plants and animals aren't like humans. We don't have the same type of innate intelligence. We need vast amounts of luck to even set foot upon the path of cultivation. It isn't until we cultivate more that we can begin to understand human issues and principles. Kunlun Jun had long been a deity in the great wild before Buzhou, I believe, Buzhou Mountain fell. No one's heard tell of him for at least 5,000 years. To be honest, until you, my previous master, left me, I was just a little cat who could only sleep and eat. You overestimate my cultivation. Da Qing curled up on the ledge. A little desolate, he said, We're different from humans. We're foolish and stupid. That's not that different from humans. Even after thousands of years, we can't cultivate much intelligence. That's also still not that different from humans. We're only able to recognize our master. I don't know much about anything else. Zhao Yunlan flicked the ashes from his cigarette. Actually, I've seen a painting of Kunlun Jun. Da Qing raised his head. Little cat, Zhao Yunlan said, and then fell silent, thinking. How long were you a little cat? What kind of place would make a small animal like you stop growing? Kunlun Mountain's peak was the birthplace of all gods, and also the burial place for countless gods and demons from the era of chaos. The snow never melted, and some flowers there bloomed only once every 1,000 years. From the dawn of time to the present, only a handful of rough, stunted, gnarled trees grew there, but each growth ring in their trunks recorded extraordinary stories beyond number. A heavy unease rose in Da Qing's heart. It felt like an invisible hand was pushing everyone toward a predetermined destination. His fur stood on end. Change is constant with mortals and their affairs. Their comings and goings through time make up history. That's a footnote. That's from the poem Climbing Shan Mountain with Friends by Tang Dynasty poet Meng U Haran. That was an attempt. And their ant-like fates were no different than the rise and fall of innumerable gods. In all the heavens and earth, nothing could remain on top forever. Did Pangu really split chaos open, or did chaos's form simply change? Da Qing was suddenly consumed with fear. He had few memories of his youth, but some things were buried deep within his very blood and bones, such as how, despite his first master's cycles of reincarnation, Da Qing smell him through them all. He could still remember his master's robes, green as the distant mountains, their sleeves scented with new snow and bamboo, the unruly laugh, the warm hand that cradled him close. A sudden piercing bird cry came from not far away. Da Qing and Zhao Yunlan turned and looked in unison. A huge murder of crows had all taken flight at once. It was as if all the crows in the city had spread their black wings and covered the sky. If misfortune descends from the heavens, the crows are the first to know. Surrounded by the noise of howling wind and cawing crows, Zhao Yunlan abruptly said, I want to tell you something. Can you keep your mouth shut? Da Qing faced him and solemnly said, What you say will enter and never leave. Go ahead. Shen Wei is the sole executing emissary, said Zhao Yunlan. I'm a little worried about him right now. Da Qing slipped, losing his footing as if he were having a stroke, and fell straight off the ledge. Now is the time. Now is the time. That was the end of the chapter. Now's the time. We gotta work on your timing, Zhao. We need to have a meeting. We need to sit down. We need to hash this out. We gotta do something about when you decide to say things. That's the end of the chapter. We are on page 221 for chapter 16, and that is where we are stopping for today. 221. Oh, perfect. Just shy of 50. We're pretty much bang on there. Alrighty, where the heck did my bookmark go? Okay. It is Thursday. I hope you guys are able to get out of the house and go do something this weekend. At the very least, just make sure to go for walks and stuff. Do not sit and stew. And I say that as someone who should really get out of the house more. So that is my goal for, well, the foreseeable future, but especially over the rest of this week and this weekend. I'm going to do my best, and I would love it if you did too, to get out of the house more than usual and breathe in the air and breathe in deep and talk to people, and for the love of fucking God, don't doom scroll. That is it for the week. I will be here. I want to double check. Yeah, I will be here next Tuesday and Thursday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, to read you the good gay shit. That's what they're doing. And if you know anybody who could use a couple of hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're available to turn their brain off, or after, considering that these streams get posted as a video immediately once they go off, let them know. Let them know that a fangirl is reading the good gay stuff if they need something entirely different to focus on right now. I love you very, 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 very fucking much. Please take care of yourselves. And I will see you next week.